Well, hello. I've just read chapter 5 of Coruscant Knight's Jedi Twilight. Um, I will say, I am aware that I have changed the space backgrounds in my Coruscant Knight reviews. I haven't brought it up, but I thought I'd bring it up now. The main reason is just because the little file that I had that originally had the previous um space background, it's now gone. It's just for some reason no longer in my files. It probably ClipChamp probably just deleted it. Um, so I tried finding it again, couldn't find it. So at the moment, I'm just working with a new one. So yeah, and it'll probably have to be changed again at some point when I lose that file. So yeah, it's just so you know. But anyway, I've read chapter 5 of Coruscant Knight's Jedi Twilight, and I quite enjoyed this chapter. This I was complaining a bit about the exposition in the last chapter, and I think this chapter did the exposition right because it is a mostly exposition chapter. I'm not going to deny that a lot of these chapters so far early in this book are just exposition filled, but we meet. I assume I don't think he's going to play a massive role. From what I know, of course, the Knights. I don't think he's in a main role or anything. But we meet a citizen called Dender, and he's in a pub having a couple drinks, and he's asking for another from the Biff bartender, and he's telling him little fun facts like how the Biff, because of what species he is, has very acute. His sense of vision, yeah, his vision's very acute. And the Biff tells him that he knows he's had, and that he tells him that his vision's telling him that that Den has had enough to drink, and Den tells him that, oh, don't you know, Celestins can't get drunk. And the Biff just tells him, well done, you've done the impossible, and and suggests him to leave the bar and get a taxi home. And that's when we can't pick up the exposition on Den. We learn it starts going on about someone called Foley, um, and about about uh, Dane's and about how Dan was a journalist at one point, and how he has written an article on Foley, um, and his pub, and he thought him to be more murderous than heroic, and his editors rewrote his article or whatever it was, his writing, to make him seem more heroic, to make Foley seem more heroic. And basically, because if Palpatine just wanted the Clone Wars to seem more like a glorious episode in galactic history, as it says in the book, more than you know, a war, it just led to Danger who against Luston. I don't know if I brought that up. I think I did. He just winds up. He's just now at a point where he's not unable to do any work. Um, and the rent is due soon, etc. Um, and then we also told about how he has a droid called I5. I5. I just realised that's similar as a high five. But what's the droid's, yeah, the full designation for the droid is I5YQ. But he just calls him I5, and we're told that he feels like I5's more of a friend. Saying it out loud, I'm just realising now that sounds like high five. But yeah, I5 is more of a friend to her Den. And we're told that I5 has a bit of a quest, and that he's looking for Lorne Pavan's son, Jax Pavan, who of course we met in the last chapter. And it had taken some difficulty to get to Coruscant, but they're there now. And Jen's a bit low on the hope on trying to find Jax Pavan, because when they finally did get to Coruscant, Order 66 had been orders and the Empire had just risen, and they eventually learn that most Jedi are no longer around. He thinks the effort's a bit futile, but I5, still has some hope to try and find him. Anyway, then Den gets up from a bench outside, and he starts trying to make his way home, and he bumps into some ganks. And they're about to cut off one of his earlobes before I5 comes along, and he's a protocol droid, but he seems to have been fitted with some weapons because he has a little laser pointer on his finger, which I think he can fire, little blaster bolts from, and he's able to scare the ganks away. And I quite like I5. I'll read out some of his lines here. Well, the droids continue. Oh, okay. Here we go. So Den just tells him, next time don't cut it so close, he growls. Whatever do you mean? Photoreceptors projected. Oh, I'm going to struggle with this word. Viewless innocence. I calculate that I had an entire 2.7 seconds before the vibro knife would have actually then raised both hands to stop the droid's reply. Okay, not really needing to hear the gory details. Thanks anyway. The immobile metal face somehow managed to look slightly amused. I live to serve, I5 said. Yeah, I quite like I5. I think so far, I5 probably has the most personality. um, yeah, I quite like I5. I quite like I5 at the moment. I generally, though, not a whole lot to really discuss in this chapter. Again, at the moment, the book is just, introducing us to the characters, giving us some backgrounds on them. So there's not really a whole lot to talk about in terms of the characters. Something I actually just that I forgot to mention with Den. He had tried to write a novel and put in his own views in there, but he's more of a journalist and just struggled to write a novel. But yeah, it was quite interesting, hearing about Den's past. I think the the history of Den here is probably the most coherent backstory we've gotten so far. When it came to Jax in the previous chapter, it just kind of felt a bit all over the place. Evan Peel, we really didn't get too far into it. And Nick Ross too, it kind of felt like we were more or less just listing off periods of his life rather than going too much into his history. Here, but I think Nick Ross who's probably still got a really good, background in this book. But I think Zender so far has the most coherent background that we've been given. It feels like a naturally flowing history, and yeah, it's now chapter 6. Hmm. Okay, I won't surprise me if we're seeing Sheezer next chapter. It's bringing up Black Sun, and I do know Sheezer or Sheezer. I always get confused with Sheezer's name. I know it's Sheezer or Sheezer, but it's spelled Xizor. And I always, for a while, thought it was Zior, but apparently it's Sheezer. But I know Sheezer is in these books. I don't know how big of a role he plays, but yeah, it's gonna be. It wouldn't surprise me if we see Sheezel this chapter. I think it is. I think at the moment, I know there's 40 chapters in this book, but it does. I think it is just a little bit like, well, you know, 40 pages in, no, almost 50 actually, and we still don't quite, and we're still kind of in like pretty much a prologue to the book, It wouldn't surprise me if that's just what part one of the book is, because it is split into a couple parts, what to say. Yeah, it says part one, life during wartime. Okay, so I assume this basically is just a prologue introducing us to the characters. Okay, that makes more sense now looking at it, considering we've been told a lot about the character's life during the Clone Wars. But yeah, it's been good so far. The book and this chapter. I think this chapter is probably one of the better ones. I'm looking forward to see how the book is once we actually get into the plot, because again, it's taken quite a while to get into the plot. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far, but it could be a little bit better in some places, I think. But yeah, I think once we start getting into the plots, I'll be able to kind of give proper thoughts on the book, because at the moment it really just is we've just been introduced to the characters. Each character's kind of getting chapters to themselves, etc. So yeah. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I have nothing else to say, so thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Hello, so I just read chapter 6 of Coruscant Nights, Jedi Twilight. I don't really have a whole lot to say on this chapter, honestly. There isn't really a whole lot to talk about. So this is more maybe a bit of a short review, but knowing me, when I say it's short, it might go on and on and on. Pardon me. So, we are introduced to a character called Caird of the Nedigi. Yeah, I think it's Nedigi, or the Nedigi, which are a bird species, and the entire time I kept thinking of the birds from the Sarah Jane Adventures. I can't remember what they're called, but I keep imagining Caird as one of them. You know, like the one that David Bradley, he voiced one of them. They're like big emus. You know, I keep imagining Caird as like one of them. It just keeps coming to mind each time Caird's brought up. But we're introduced to Caird, and we're given basically a quick rundown of what his goal is, which is to try and become a Vigo in Black Sun. I do not know a lot about Black Sun. They're generally just a point of interest that don't really interest me, so I'm really going to probably struggle with this aspect of the story if they don't explain stuff. I assume Vigo is some sort of like high position. It's just to say that it's like one of the second highest positions. There's only like 8 of the positions that are equal to Vigo, and the highest position you can reach is Underlord, the, which is like, you know, the person who rules the entire Black Sun. And we're told that Caird's ultimate goal is to just get back to his homeworld of Nedige. And we're told that he had once basically been exiled from there, but that was a long time ago, and he thinks there'll be his people would welcome him back, given how long it's been. If they didn't, he was more than happy to just nest in solitude. But we're told that he can't leave Black Sun, because to do so, Black Sun would hunt him down. You're in there for life. So he hopes that he can become a Vigo, because there's a position open for us at the moment, and you know, make his way back to her and start pulling more strings, which he thinks will be due over the next 2 or 3 years, and he'll be able to get back to his homeworld. The thing that's stopping him though is Prince Shizor, and I'm actually going to take a little bit of a detour here, because it took me so long to realise that Shizor's name is pronounced Shizor. I knew it was pronounced Shizor going into this book, but I had read Evasive Action quite a few years ago, and Shizor was in that. And I did not know how to pronounce Shizor's name, because it's Xizor. So I always thought it was Zizor, or Zia, or something like that. So it was just, how do you pronounce that? But apparently it's Shizor, or Shiza. I think it's Cheezel. But yeah, the problem is that for Caird is that Cheezel is also up to become a Vigo. They're both getting quite close to it, and Caird really wants to kill Cheezel, but he's restraining himself because what was this at the beginning? I remember it, but don't in a weird way. Here we go. Will the removal of this particular entity to the Great Nest benefit his purpose, or would it simply satisfy a yearning for revenge, smooth some temporarily ruffled feathers? If it was the latter, then there was no point to it. As the Aqualish saying went, revenge is a cold current to swim in. Insults and slights were to be acted upon only if I'm going to struggle with this word. Only if it expedite oh, expedite one's agenda to do so. So, he's only doing it if it's actually going to help him. And at the moment, it's not going to help. It's not going to help him at the moment. Even though it does, yeah. But he just is still fantasizing about it. And we also learn that he was an assassin in Black Sun up until about a year ago, where he's really sort of making progress in Black Sun. Yeah, that's basically all you really need to know about this chapter, because that's basically all the chapter is about. It's basically just telling us what Cairde's goals are. There's really not a whole lot to it. You kind of feel a bit sympathetic to Cairde. I do feel a bit of sympathy for him, because he just wants to go home, but he's now stuck in this situation where he can't go home, otherwise, you know, he's risk having to be getting shot down one day when he answers his door, and he knows that because he's been the one who's forced someone who's deserted Black Sun to come and open their door, and being the one who shot them because he was an assassin at one point for Black Sun. But yeah, I don't quite know what Cairde's involvement in this story is even going to be. But yeah, um, we'll see what goes on with Caird. Um, yeah, it looks like we'll be going back to Nick Rostu next chapter. Um, so hopefully we're actually going to start moving the plot now. But yeah, I really do not have a lot to say on this chapter, because it really just is. There's not really a whole lot to say. We're just being told about a character who's probably going to be important later on, and what importance they have to the plot. So yeah, I don't know whether it's this book or the next book, but I do know Aura Singh is in this book as well, and apparently and apparently there's going to be something with the Jedi Temple at some point in this book series as well. I'm fairly sure it's like Aura Singh fights Jax at some point in the temple or something like that. I know there's something with Aura Singh and the Jedi Temple at some point in this, but yeah. Well, that brings an end to this video. Again, I have really so little to say on this chapter. Cairde's just kind of come out of nowhere. And again, I do not know a lot about Black Sun and Star Wars. It just don't really interest me that much. So I have really little to say on this, and it did talk quite a bit about different things relating to Black Sun, and because I just don't know what it is, it just didn't really interest me that much. So what I'm more interested in Cairde's character more than, what he's trying to do. Hopefully I can kind of understand what's going on with what with Caird and Black Sun. But I have a feeling I'm going to struggle to, which isn't very good. But yeah. Anyway, that kind of brings an end to this video. I don't really have anything else to say about this chapter, so yeah. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.